do you prepare your motorcycle for riding over long distances in hot temperatures? What do you do when sand blows into sensitive parts of your motorcycle? Have you got the right coolant for the climate you are riding in? Are there any special tips for riding sports tours over long distances in hot environments? What do you do when sand blows into sensitive parts of your motorcycle? In this episode we will answer all these questions and also speak about the wear and tear on tires, on long distance motorcycle trips and also vehicle maintenance. Today we are at Zoo Motorcycles, run by my friend Ian Millward. He used to service my motorcycle while I was living in Oxford, and today we will speak to him about preparing my bike for the charity trip to Dubai.
All these years of refined mechanicking, and you got me with a bloody lump hammer and a chisel. But that's opened it nicely. Perfect. I'm good for you, Alexis.
Thank you. Ian, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today about preparing our motorcycles for our long trip to Dubai in aid of UNICEF's Pakistan Flood Children's Appeal. What are some of the main things that we have to take into consideration when riding through hot desert terrain, like for example Saudi Arabia?
It's going to be the same as what you would have in all extremes of temperature. Really, you need to check that antifreeze is probably the most important, because antifreeze will stop you from overheating as well as icing. So that's the main thing. Obviously oil level as well. They all contribute towards engine heat. If you've got the right amount of oil in there and the right amount of antifreeze mix or even water mix, it will do the job. It will bring the engine down. Make sure that the fan works and your cooling system works before you ride off. So I would just run the bike, wait for the fan to cut in, make sure everything's working as it should, and yeah, happy days.
Jamal and I plan to do some off-roading on our way down to Dubai. Any tips you can give us on how to deal with sand?
Dealing with sand, yeah, that's more awkward. The problem with it is if you're riding along in sand and you've got a decent sort of wind as well, there is a lot of, it's like sandblast, and it can be really damaging on the engine. I think the best thing to do is, again, if you can protect the radiator somehow, use one of the protective shields that you can buy from aftermarket basically, and just clean it. The major thing is going to be sanding wheel bearings, chains, etc. They're going to really extend or reduce the life of the chain or the wheel bearings. So if you can give it a clean off, especially with the chain. Keep the chain very, very well lubed, and we should be alright.
Some years ago I did a circumnavigation of the Iberian Peninsula, and on a couple of very hot days my coolant liquid would come bursting through the radiator cap. Is there any advice that you can give us on antifreeze and coolant liquid?
Well, if the liquid's coming out, then there's an issue. It shouldn't do that particularly. So I would just check that your caps are very good, in good condition, good seals on the caps, radiator cap, expansion bottle cap. But mostly check that it's a good mix. You need 50-50. Pre-mixed stuff's very good, it saves you mixing it. But if there is a leak, generally you've got an issue. It means your fan's not cutting in as it should do. The hotter temperatures, yeah, it will overheat. The only thing you can do, or it could overheat I should say, so the only thing you can do is really stop and turn the machine off. If it looks like it's getting to that point, it will run up to a certain point when your fan stays on constantly. Obviously if you're not moving forward, there's nothing to help the fan, so the only thing really you can do is stop and let it cool down for a bit.
John will be riding a ZZR 1100, which is a sports tourer. Any special tips for him?
Well, again, it all comes down to preparation and planning. It comes down to making sure your antifreeze level is mixed correctly. As I say, it is a coolant rather, it will stop it from freezing, but it will also stop it from overheating. But as far as riding, if you've got a big bike which is fully fed, it is going to get hotter. Just make sure, again, look round through the fairing and make sure there's nothing blocking it like plastic bags or anything like that. Make sure it's all clean. If you can put a brush over the front of the radiator just to take off any rubbish that's stuck on the front, that would be a great help. But mainly it's just check everything's in good condition, ride the bike at highest gear. Yeah, so 5th gear up 30 mile an hour. If you can get away with that, then do it, because it will keep the engine RPM down.
How do we prepare How do we prepare ourselves for the wear and tear on tyres on long motorcycle trips?
So riding over long distances, the main things you've got to concern for is going to be tyres, because the more mileage you do, the hotter the tyre gets, especially on sports bikes where the tyres can get very, very thin. Just keep an eye on them for wear. They will tend to peel quite quickly, especially on the sports bike tyres. And the main thing is check your tyre pressures when the engine or when the bike's cold. When the tyres are cold, don't check it when it's warm, because warm tyres will equal a lower pressure because the pressure inside the tyre rises. But that's the main thing, just keep an eye on your tyres, because if you get a puncture, then it's going to be more difficult to fix. And those little tiny puncture repair kits are a really good idea, the rubber bungs that are pressed in. So I would say check your tyre pressures, check the condition of your tyre, and make sure you've got some sort of puncture repair kit, and happy days really.
And finally, can you just tell us a few things about daily vehicle checks?
Daily vehicle checks, really what you need to do is just every morning get up, have a good walk round your bike. Just walk round and have a look and say, well, you know, has anybody touched it? Does it look the same as when I left it? And that's the first thing, and you can do that as you're walking up to the bike. But really it's a good idea just to check the chain for play and wear, check your tyres, of course, that's very important, and just generally have a look at the general condition of the machine, make sure there's no puddles of oil, puddles of water, and again check your antifreeze by looking in the expansion bottle before you ride off. And yeah, you shouldn't have any issues at all, but main thing is keep it clean, keep it inspected, and you'll be alright.
So there you have it. Riding in a hot sandy environment requires regular checks on the coolant, fan and radiator, and regular inspections of moving parts. While it may be difficult to carry out all these checks after a long day's riding, carrying them out may actually prevent a minor or major mechanical disaster and save your trip from being ended early.